We are huge on coaching. That's in the DNA of our firm. And coaching is not just, hey, boy, you did really good on that engagement. Coaching is who are you as a person? Where do you want to go? And how can I personally help get you there? It's the whole caring thing to the nth degree. So I would say we really lean into people when they walk into this firm with a robust coaching relationship and make sure it's the right coaching relationship.
Are you more focused on what your employees can do for you or what you can do for them? And which of those two attitudes do you think creates the most engaged followers? I'm your host, Tim Spiker, and this is the Be Worth Following podcast, a production of the People Forward Network. On this show, we talk with exceptional leaders, thinkers, and researchers about what actually drives effective leadership across the globe and over time. You just heard from Randie Dial, one of the managing principals of CliftonLarsonAllen. CLA, as it is known, is a professional services firm that works with everyone from large multinational corporations to startups and across a breadth of industries. Well, they specialize in consulting for financial services such as audit, tax planning, and wealth management, while also advising clients regarding business strategies, digital strategies, and outsourcing. All told, CLA serves over 200,000 clients in more than 100 countries through a staff of more than 7,500. That's a pretty big family, right? So how does Randie make sure that employees are seen and valued as individuals? By simply caring. It's an effective approach that Randie not only applies today, but one that he was on the receiving end earlier in his career. There was a point when he was on the edge of burnout and gave his notice. But a leader saw his potential, took him to breakfast, and got to the root of the problem. Randie leverages that experience to inform how he connects and coaches those he leads today. Randie has been a leader since he was young. Before leading in an office environment as an adult, he was honing his leadership skills on playing fields and courts. So let's start there.
One of the leaders in my life who taught me leadership at a younger age was my dad. I was a competitor at a young age. I was in 3 sports. I was typically your team captain, right? The guy on the floor, the coach, let's go, we can win this thing. I just learned a lot of that from my dad, and I think it helped launch me into a career, so to speak, as I got through college and just kind of got my feet under me. There's probably two leaders who were at CLA that will always be in my heart and just be those that really kind of helped me find my footing in a career. One of those being the gentleman that hired me initially. His name's Jim Allarding. Jim ran a very successful practice here for CLA in Indianapolis, took the risk and hired me as my first intern, if you will, and just brought me under his wing to just show me what this career is really about. And one of the best things Jim did for me was tell me, I never want to see you here for lunch. And when you're 22 years old, you really don't understand what that means. And what he was trying to tell me is the more people you get to know, the better your career becomes. And so, right from the start, he was pushing me out of the nest. Go. I don't care if it's an attorney, a banker, an insurance agent, just go buy people lunch and get to know people. And so, I'd say that was one of the first people that really touched me and just showed me that the more people you get to meet and help, the better your career becomes, and just how that circles back to you twofold, threefold. So that was number one. The second gentleman was, I would call him my career coach and the guy that supervised me for a number of years. His name's Yasir Karam. Now, Yasir is still with the firm today. He's our chief solutions officer. Yasir and I started the same year and just developed this bond and this friendship. And why I believe he is such a great coach is I will give you at one point in my career, I walked in and I had my third kid at home. The pressure had built. I'm in my 6th year at CLA here, and just you just hit that moment where you're just we've all had it, right? You're just at that moment where you just don't know what direction to turn. Well, the direction I turned is I walked in one day with no notice and laid a resignation letter down on Yasir's desk. There was a lot of reasons for that at the time. I was doing some things here that I wasn't enjoying, and I didn't know a way out other than just quit and go start over somewhere, which is just stupid, right? But you're young and I had no idea what to ask and really how to address that. And the kind of person Yasir is, and why I believe to this day I'm here because of him, is he called me that night and said, "Hey, take a deep breath, just meet me for breakfast tomorrow morning. Let's talk this thing out." And so he met me for breakfast and we had this real emotional, candid conversation. And I was able to tell him hey, I don't like what I'm doing here. I was involved in a lot of litigation work back at that point. It's just not a career I was looking for. I love the M&A area, right? Getting out and helping companies buy and sell. And Yasir said, why don't we do that? Like, why can't we? And I said, well, I didn't know we could just change what we want to do. And he goes, that's the ability of changing an inspired career. We go in, we talk about what we enjoy, and let's change it. He goes, I'll be honest with you, Randie, I don't like litigation either. So let's build something special here. Let's get this thing going. And I will never forget what he did for me that day. And I built what became, a great practice here with him at my side. And so I'd say those are two just early on that cared about me as a person and were just trying to show me, just ask, speak up, and just do what's right. And this is a great place for you.
It's amazing. Sometimes maybe it's sad. Sometimes maybe it's just real life. How the mere act of caring can be a tremendous aspect of leadership. We look at our leaders, we see how busy they are, we see how many decisions they have to make, and yet when they pause to invest or to listen, just communicates something regarding worth, I think, that lands at a pretty deep place just from a human perspective. And what happens when we get to come to work for a leader who sees that we have value? And maybe it's a little bit sad that we have to talk about that, meaning I just wish that it was inherent everywhere.
And that's been part of the culture that I've tried to drive here. That's what I got, and that's what I want to give. To your point, exactly. People are heads down, they're busy, they're trying to serve their clients here. I get all that, but boy, if we don't remember to lift our heads and engage with people and show them the career they can have here and show them that we truly care, they won't last. It just means so much to people.
Well, you mentioned caring, you mentioned the culture. Let's talk about that because you came into leadership there at CLA in 2015. And let's just say that the culture of the organization could have been better. I'll just put it that way. It wasn't necessarily at the top of the heap in the organization. And so as you took over leadership, you have sought to shift that culture here over these last 7 years. And I know that the concept of caring has been a part of that. So can you unpack that a little bit for us and help us understand how you take a concept like that and try to make it an ingrained part of a culture?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a lot of steps to what we ultimately became today. So you took over leadership. It was an office that I would say was very siloed, right? So every group, although they were doing okay, had their own cultures. No one ever brought the office together, and we really weren't growing, right? Each group was doing their own thing, but when you kind of holistically looked at our office at that time, we weren't growing. And so we had just been through a mega merger in the past 2 years because here we were called Clifton Gunderson. We merged with Larson to create CliftonLarsonAllen. Now it's 2 years later, and I think the firm started to catch its stride. Here we go. We're starting to move. Our location was not. And I think the executives of the firm realized that we needed a change. They needed someone that I think could bring optimism, care, growth mindset to the office, and that just happened to be me. Now, I'm not going to pretend to tell you that I had all of my great plans laid out. I had all these great ideas, but I knew in my heart, right, through my competitive days, my sports days, this was my chance to be the coach. Let's go. Let's get this team rallied. I just have a heart for people, and I think people really started to see that just from the start of my role. But there were some steps that I made early on to just show the office we have got to make some different changes here if we truly are going to build one team here. One simple one that I just will share with you is I made us change where we sit in the office. And I will tell you some of the emails I got around that time when I was shifting teams from one area of the office to another because I was trying to mesh people together, form a seamless team. I don't want groups siloed. I want us all to get to know each other. I got emails that were, just like, boy, you're really going to destroy the culture, or boy, I don't know what you're doing. This isn't going to work.
Did you say exactly? Thank you.
Yeah, I was like, what culture?
You've pegged me exactly. This is my intention, to destroy the old culture and bring something new.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what's funny is it worked. And people today would tell you that was one of the best decisions that we could have ever done. It's just we didn't even know who we were as people, right? So you want your tax people to know your audit people, to know your accounting people, to know your wealth people. That's what a team is. We got to know each other. So that was one thing that I did early on, and it helped us start to build those bridges of connection. The other thing I did was, just change some of the cultural things such as lunch in the office, right? This was just hard to believe, I know, but it was a sore point. we would have a group buy lunch for themselves in the office, but not for anyone else. And so when I took over, you'd have this group buy lunch. You could smell it. They'd go through, they'd eat, but there'd be nothing left for the other groups. And so I simply started saying, look, if we're going to buy lunch, we're buying it for everyone in the office. It is not for one specific group like the old regime allowed. And so that I think started to show people, okay, this guy's all about the team. I like this. This is great. And then just around growth in the market, just showing people the talent we have here is unbelievable. I said that in my first meeting. I said, it's sad that we're not growing because look around this room. We have some of the best tenured talent in the city of Indianapolis, bar none. We're just not harnessing it. Let's go. Let's figure out a strategy to go to market and let's start winning some of these, clients that I know need to be here. We started getting that flow going. The best thing that happened in my tenure was in my second year, we got a cold call. I won't mention any client names, but we got a cold call from one of the largest private companies in the state of Indiana that was going out for bid. And it was our first test. Like, let's go after this thing, right? They were going to go out to like 7 firms and let's see where we finish. I will be honest with you today, I didn't think we'd win, right? Because we were just starting to kind of really build this thing. But after months of presentations and getting to know the CFO and really showing the talent we have here in Indianapolis, we ended up winning. And it was the largest win we had had to date in the private sector in the state of Indiana. And I will tell you, when I delivered that news here, you could start to see the wheels turning in a lot of my leaders' mind. Like, holy cow, if we can win that one, why can't we go win all of them? And that is the moment when everyone started clicking like, wow, we got a real team here. We got a leader that cares. He's all in. Let's build this thing. I'm telling you, that's what's continued over the last 8 years here.
I want to go back to a part about the lunches. Organizations, they'll have budgets for things like this. And in a moment, you went from a department pays for this to I'm paying for, like, at that moment, I want to say you probably tripled or quadrupled the expense of that lunch. Is that a fair estimate?
Yep.
What's your mentality? Granted, I know it's not a ton of money, but isn't that the interesting and ironic point? It's not a ton of money, and yet before we weren't spending that money. So like I say, hey, it's just a little bit. Well, then why not? So you obviously have a different mentality about investing dollars like that.
Yeah, and dollars are always important, so I want to make sure I'm clear. Like, I did think about that, but when you're trying to build the intangible value of a team concept and knowing that instead of buying lunch for 30 people, you're now going to move that to 60 or 70 people, whoever in the office that day, just knowing the camaraderie that's going to happen when everyone gets together to eat lunch, the seamless opportunities that when tax partner meets with audit partner and they all of a sudden share a potential lead or a way to share, that is what builds this cadence of a team. And if I have to spend a little money to create that kind of synergy, I'll do that all day long. And then just think about retention, the cost that we're all spending to find talent today. If I can spend a little money on lunch to bring teams together and that helps retain talent, another intangible savings that sometimes we just don't think about, right? We just think of the dollars and cents. And so I'm more of a believer in investing in little things like that I believe ultimately pay unbelievable results. And that's exactly what we've seen here.
When the culture surveys come out, one of the questions that's routinely there is, do I have a best friend at work? Now, I know we can't wave a magic wand and legislate that or you two are going to be friends, but it's interesting to me to think about you in a leadership position that is thinking about how do we create possibilities for connecting people together. Can you say a little bit about the connection that you see as a leader between caring about people and their belief in what's going on around here?
End of the day, it's the word trust. When you have leaders that you believe have your back, care about you, invest in you, you're just bound to follow them into battle the way you're explaining it, right? I want to go up that hill as far as I can for my leader because of what they've done for me. I'm a huge believer in that. And I think that speaks to a lot of the retention of the talent that we've been able to keep. Have we lost some people in the battle? Absolutely, we have. A lot of people have. But we have retained a lot of great people simply because of the investment, the trust, the transparent discussions, the things they're dealing with at home that we're willing to listen to and coach and help. That is what leaders do today. And it takes a lot of time on leaders' shoulders. It can be exhausting at times, but if you truly care about your workforce and your team, that's what you're going to do for them. And when you do that, just watch what they will do back for the organization and for the leadership. It's just trust and transparency.
You've got care, and then you've got achievement over here on the other side. And then what's the bridge that is connecting those two things? And you're describing it so well in trust. But this isn't talked about very much. And so I'm so glad you're bringing it up, because people don't talk about how does trust connect to engagement and results. We want to talk about strategy and a lot of other things. I don't want to talk about how trustworthy the person in the mirror is. That couldn't possibly be what causes people to bring it fully or not.
Well, and I would just follow up with that, right? The bigger you get, the harder it is for the person at the top, let's just say the managing partner of Indianapolis, myself, to get all the way to the staff, right? And so you got to build trust in levels. And so when I share with my leaders, my direct leaders, what it's like to sit in my chair and the stuff that I have coming at me and how they can help, they get it, right? And then they have to build that trust with the people that they're having reported to them. That's the hard part of building this trust throughout the organization. But if you do it right, it can be done, and results will follow and your team will follow. And it takes time.
Another thing that most organizations are not particularly excited about hearing, which is this takes time. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the board, because you came to CLA and then eventually you had an opportunity to become a part of the board. So what has it been like for you to be a leader as a board member, different than leading the region there out of Indiana?
Very different. I can assure you that. So I was blessed to be elected to our board of directors. Not very many people get that opportunity. I was elected to start the year January of 2020. If you can remember what happened in 2020, that was quite an interesting year.
I do, yes.
This big pandemic came rolling in March, and when you're on the board and only been on the board for 3 months, it got real very fast. But I got to watch some unbelievable navigation by our CEO, by our management team, the rest of the board, to really, I would say, have a sense of calm, right? Like, this will pass. We've got to do this right. We've got to be disciplined. We've got to communicate. We've got to be transparent. We've got to make some really hard decisions, which we did that year. But ultimately, it led us to a place that was very good by the end of the year. And 21 and 22 have been awesome years. And so I've got to be part of a board that saw us through a pandemic. I've gotten to watch a management team that's just build solutions and technology and dashboards and just things that businesses have to do today to survive. So the difference being, I got to see it for a massive firm, and I've got to be part of discussions with some people leading our entire firm. It's just experience you soak up, and you learn so many things just in these meetings and these conversations that honestly I can then go back and use in my role leading the state of Indiana. Very different roles, very different seats, but man, do you learn a lot in both that you can use in both settings.
Is there anything in particular when you think about lessons learned where you got a window into it at the board level that you wouldn't have otherwise, where you're like, oh, wow, that is so valuable for me to bring back to a local leadership team?
Yeah, I mean, there were always pieces I would get in the board meeting that later I knew was coming, and I understood why as the leader of the state of Indiana, where a lot of people leading their offices may not have understood the discussion, the why, what it was really like in the room to vet some of these tough issues. So I had the luxury of being part of those meetings, knowing it was coming. So I think I had a different mindset as to the why we made those decisions. I probably can articulate them a little better to my team here locally than some can in their locations, because they weren't in the room. They didn't understand some of those connotations. And so I'd say that was a great value for me during these last 3 years. It's just having that connection.
I want to reach back a little bit further. You have landed here, and yet there was a point in your life when, from a career standpoint, you were headed in a very different direction.
Yeah, I'm from small town Indiana. There weren't a lot of business classes. I really never heard what business was or what even accounting was, to be honest with you. I go off to college. My mentors in high school were my teachers and coaches. Again, I was a sports kid, so you know what? I'll be a math teacher and a coach. That was my career. I'm a sophomore in Ball State. I'm in this really hard math class because I was really good at math. It's killing me. I'm really questioning what am I doing? Is this really what I want to do? Because I wanted a good GPA, I just happened to take this class in the syllabus called Accounting 201 because it looked easy and I just wanted to get an A. That's the only reason I took this class, I'll be honest. But there was someone in that class that noticed me. This was the light bulb moment why it's so important that we pour into people. This professor calls me up after class as everyone's leaving one day, and all he said to me was, "Hey, you're really good at this class. I just wanted to tell you, you seem like a natural." And really, he was trying to feel me out as to why he doesn't see me in any other accounting classes. And I told him, well, I'm not an accounting major. I just frankly thought the class sounded, interesting. I wanted a good grade for my GPA. I'm a teaching major. And he said, okay. And he didn't pressure me, any of that. He just said, if you ever want to learn about accounting, I think you'd be really good at it. I just wanted to kind of plant that seed, if you will. And off he went. And I went home that night and I checked in with my parents because I didn't want to sound like an idiot to this guy because I really didn't know what accounting was. And they shared a little bit about the whole CPA and the tax accountant and all that, which I was like, well, that's actually kind of intriguing. I'm going to go talk to this guy. And I did. And lo and behold, here I am today. So it's the power of noticing people and telling them what you notice. Not just noticing and moving on, but actually taking the time to pull them aside and having a conversation with them. It changed my whole trajectory.
Some ways I feel like that's just a different version of what we were talking about earlier with caring. Like if you see something, like maybe Randie's not going to change his major from teaching to accounting, but at least he gets to have a little encouragement today. At least he gets to see that I see something in him that's a capability that I think is kind of unique. And there's no ulterior motive there. It's just, hey, let me let somebody know that they're doing something well. Worst case scenario, it puts a little wind in their sails for today. And then sometimes it totally changes the course of their life. So that's the other thing that happens sometimes. All right, as you look forward, as you're leading the Indianapolis branch for CLA, what are some of the bigger challenges that you see ahead of you as an organization? This could be local to geography, or maybe it's for CLA on the whole.
Yeah, definitely CLA as a whole, profession as a whole, local, just figuring out this workforce right now. And everyone's dealing with it. I can't say it's just our profession, but it has hit our profession fairly hard. What keeps me up at night is just how we're going to continue to build leaders. And the reason that's getting harder is some of the enrollment at universities are down, some of the enrollments in accounting is down. There's this sense of we need to make a comeback to some extent from a profession standpoint. There is a sense of the pandemic layover feel. We've got some really good, experienced 4 to 5 year people that, boy, were they hungry and go getters. And then all of a sudden they were sent home. And now it's just hard to get that hunger back in them. And so you're starting to wonder, are they going to be here long term? Just those things. It's the people piece. It's really hard to figure out right now. And all the negativity we all see in the world, every corner we turn is affecting people's mental health and the burnout. When you're trying to continue a growth rate of 10 to 15%, which we've seen for 8 straight years, and you've got that on the people side, that is just two hard things to juggle right now. So I'd say that's a struggle. I am encouraged right now. The college kids seem very hungry. We're hiring a bunch of interns and new staff. They feel different to me. They did not work through the pandemic. So I feel like they've never had that in-office, home, back experience. And so my hope is we start to really see a swelling of some hungry new, just career-oriented people coming in through that channel.
So you think about that challenge, and it brings me to think about the people that are there now. And okay, so we're trying to not only do the work, but we're trying to develop people-oriented leaders here within CLA so that these folks that are coming in now come into a place that's vibrant and developing them, one of care, as we talked about earlier. What are some of the things that CLA is doing currently internally to help grow and develop leaders within the organization?
So we are huge on coaching. That's in the DNA of our firm. And coaching is not just, hey, boy, you did really good on that engagement. Coaching is, who are you as a person? Where do you want to go? And how can I personally help get you there? It's the whole caring thing to the nth degree. So I would say we really lean into people when they walk into this firm with a robust coaching relationship and make sure it's the right coaching relationship. For some of the interns, we have buddy systems, and we want to make sure that they've got a buddy from day one. That buddy is there to answer any questions. A lot of these interns are nervous. They've never had a job before. How do you dress? How do you communicate? These buddies are there to help them because they literally just went through that process. So having just some of these intimate connections when they're onboarded, and then a coach to kind of be with them. Like I had told you, my coach, right? He took me to breakfast when I resigned, for goodness sake. That's what care and coaching is like. We're all in right now on just making sure our people feel belonged, included, cared for, anything they need right now. And our firm has gone even as far as to name an official path, the alumni path. So you can join CLA and you can say that I'm on the alumni path. I will not be here long term. And we don't mind, because if we can skill you up and give you a year of experience or 2 years of experience, and then you go off to a company to work, we've got friends in the market. And so if we can be the firm to help you skill up and get your inspired career going, no matter what it is, that's who we want to be as our DNA of the firm. And so I think that's something that stands out amongst a lot of our profession.
Well, it does to me. I've heard of many organizations who have alumni networks that get formed as people aren't there anymore. And the organization is often very chummy with those alumni networks because they've not taken a you're either for us or against us mentality. They say, no, this is an asset to the organization. Let's continue to feed the relationships there. But the idea of that being a live wire while you're employed is not something that I have heard before. That's pretty remarkable. And traditionally, what we did is we took a job. We all pretended like I'm going to be here for the rest of my life because that seemed like the best way to handle it. But you're talking about totally spinning that concept on its head and having young people feeling confident in enough that this isn't going to hurt them in the time that they're there, that they're willing to raise their hand and say that. I think that's remarkable. So how do you fight against the potential of, well, if I say I'm on the alumni path, do I limit my learning? Do I limit myself? Am I going to not get to do some cool projects? How do you deal with that part of it?
It takes trust, all the stuff you and I have been talking about, trust and transparency, right? I would rather have someone, and the way we communicate it, elect the alumni path, and we work with them till the end, because when you do that, they're going to respect you enough to give you enough notice of where they're going, how they're going. And honestly, our clients are always looking for talent. So if we've got young Johnny over here that has elected the alumni path, why not talk to the client about, boy, you want a good one? Here you go, and make that connection to that client. That client's going to love you for life. That's the alumni path concept. Versus they come in and they don't want to tell you they're on the alumni path, and then guess what? You get a 2-week resignation letter, and now the team is spinning out of control. How do we fix this hole? We're trying to build that trust to say, you know what? We want to know when you're leaving, and you know what? We're going to help you do it. We're going to open the doors for you. That is the CLA model.
It reminds me of something a really great leader that I know of named Andy Stanley talks about the difference between losing people and launching people. And I think you guys are taking a proactive step towards launching people if they've decided that this isn't the place for them in the long term. The bigger perspective on that, as opposed to just how are we affected, and in creating that type of openness, that's remarkable. I'm telling you, I've never heard of anything like that before, Randy.
I'm glad to blow you away. That's awesome.
Yeah, you are. I'm like, people can't see me right now, but my eyes are popping out of my head. Such a tremendous concept. All right. I want to create just a little bit of an open field here for a little bit, because we've been talking about a lot of different aspects of leadership and culture development. Is there anything that we haven't had a little time to talk about that's top of mind or top of heart for you that we want to spend a little time on?
If I had to come up with something, it would just be, we're at a point in time with people that I think people need people more than ever right now. How I would word it. Just all the stuff going on in the world, the wars, the political divide, just all the stuff you and I see on the news every day. We just all need to lean into people right now. And even if they're not in the walls of CLA and they're with, someone in the market I know or at a client, people just need to talk with each other right now. So I'd say that's part of being a leader. I don't care where you're at, where you work, or who you are. If you're just really good at leaning in and listening to people, everybody needs that right now. I'm telling you, the stuff that I hear, sometimes I feel like I'm a psychiatrist at times. It's just they need someone to listen and just be there to help them through navigation of their family, their life, the things they're dealing with, the loss of a parent. It's just all hitting, it seems, over the last couple of years. And then you pile on all this worldly stuff. It can be enormous weights on people's shoulders. So I'd just say that. I feel like people need to be more people today more than ever.
You joke about the psychology comment, but it's hard, I think, to engage with people on a regular basis around the things that are challenging in their lives. even as you care. It costs something from an energy standpoint. Do you ever find yourself like tired, like I need a break from, not that I don't care about the people, but I don't know how much more capacity I have to hear or to engage with or to help people with really challenging things they have going on. Do you ever run out of gas in that, or is that like an energy giver for you?
A little of both. I think I can do it a lot. I love doing it. I love trying to help people. If it makes them feel better, it makes me feel better. But are there times where I just have to step away and get Randie time to re-engage and get my gas filled? Yes, it's exhausting, it's tiring, but if it helps the better, greater good, that's what I'm here for. And I think more of our people, I guess that's my point, more need to be doing that, because if we all shoulder the burden more, it's not all that much on one or two people.
So let's start, as we think about what Randie had to share with us, let's start with one of the things that he was talking about at the end. He described it as the alumni path. So this is remarkable, and I have never heard of an organization doing something like this. Alumni networks, yes, but an alumni path to say, I don't think I'm going to be here over the long haul, and they create a space for everybody to put that on the table. The authenticity of that across an organization is just remarkable. And to make sure that those people are invested in, even though you know they're planning on leaving. And Randie unpacked just how beautifully that can play out. What if we have a great talent who doesn't think that this is the place for them long term, but we're able to connect them with a key client where the employee wins, the client wins? I mean, what an amazing perspective for an organization to do something like that, and then to follow through well, to make sure that there's nothing punitive about somebody saying, hey, I think I'm on the alumni path. And then now, how do we invest? How do we coach? How do we encourage? How do we connect, keeping that in mind? I think that is just a remarkable thing that they are doing. Secondly is, I want you to notice, as Randie shared what the coaching looks like within the organization, there were 3 questions that they start with from a coaching perspective, and that is, who are you, where do you want to go, and how can I help you get there? Do you notice what's absent from those 3 questions? Let's make sure we cover how you're going to help the company. Now, is that a bad question? No, it's not. But isn't it interesting that when they're prioritizing coaching, that they're not beginning with, what does the department or the organization get out of the employee? They're beginning with, what can the employee receive from the coach? And they're even starting at a deeper level than that by starting with the question, who are you? It's really connected to the care that Randie was talking about in so many different ways, but it's a very different perspective from a coaching standpoint to say, we are going to begin with, who are you, where do you want to go, and how can I help you get there? It is just not the norm for coaching within organizations to be aimed so squarely at the individual to help them. Usually, it's got a pretty strong tentacle to the organizational needs. And no doubt that if you help people grow and develop, it will help the organization. But here you see the focus of the coaching, and it begins with wanting to serve and help the employee. I think that's remarkable. Finally, going back further towards the beginning of the conversation, Randie talked about creating opportunities for people to build relationships within the organization. And this isn't something that a lot of leaders talk about, but it reminds me of an experience that I had a number of years ago. I was in Buena Vista, Colorado, for those that might know where that is here in the United States. And my wife and I were on a little trip together, and there was a stream by where we were staying. And as I looked out over the balcony, I saw that there was a very thin trail across the stream. And people periodically were walking by, but the trail was so skinny that anytime somebody came up to that part of it, if they were walking together, they had to separate. One had to go behind the other one, and they weren't really able to continue the conversation as they'd had it. And so it just got me thinking, this idea of widening the trail. What can we do as leaders to widen the trail so that people within our organizations can continue to communicate and connect with each other? And I don't mean that from a business functional standpoint, although that is important. I mean from a personal standpoint. Where are we creating opportunities? Randie described a simple one regarding lunch, but where are some of the other opportunities where you're creating space for people to build deep, healthy, and meaningful relationships, because these are the types of things, frankly, that cause people to want to stick around. This has an impact on retention. This has an impact on engagement. And yet, how many leaders do you know that are intentional about widening that trail, that are intentional about creating space for people within the organization to connect and build healthy relationships? So that's the question that I want to leave you with today. Where are you as a leader creating opportunities for the people on your teams to connect and create healthy relationships with one another? This is Tim Spiker reminding you to be worth following and to follow us wherever you receive your podcasts. If you've heard something valuable today, please share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. And if you're up for it, leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.